Hi everyone, good evening. Thank you for logging in, and I hope all of you and your families are safe. We are live on GoToWebinar and YouTube. I'm Ankit Pal, CEO of Blobcity, the makers of the AI cloud, which enables you to do AI at scale without worrying about the infrastructure. You will find us at blobcity.com, that's blobcity.com. So quickly, for people who are new to these webinars, the genesis of these webinars, fireside chats, happened when we realized that there are a number of people who do not understand how the buzzwords like data science, AI, machine learning, etc., are being applied in the real world. So we decided to call in experts, practitioners from different fields to help demystify this for us. So the format is a conversation one, and we hope to have an entertaining presentation this evening. So now some ground rules to make this work effectively. This is a 1 hour long webinar. The fireside chat will be for the first 40 to 45 minutes, followed by a 15-minute Q&A. We will take questions during the webinar, so please type them in the chat box and our support team will send them to us. Opinions presented in this webinar are purely the speakers and not in no way represent the sentiment of the companies they work for, that is Blobcity and Google. So please do pardon any internet outages. We will have someone from the support team jumping in and entertaining you. Also, before you leave, please do take the digital goodie bag, which is specially created for you for attending this webinar. All right, now that the rules are out of the way, let me welcome our guest for the evening, Dr. Pradeep Kumar Sreenivasaiah, who works as a technical program manager at Google. He started his career as a dentist from Bangalore University and now works at Google. So here's a quick intro to Pradeep. Dr. Pradeep works at Google as a technical program manager, machine intelligence. He has over 17 years of cross-functional experience spanning industry, academia, clinical practice as a dentist, and in the startup environment. He has extensive expertise in data science, AI, ML, business analytics, data mining and warehousing, IT development and management, software engineering design, consultancy, project management, R&D, systems integration in the biomedical domain. His passion lies in helping society by fighting abuse and disease on large complex systems, including the human body. Google Maps, search, and social networks through innovations that lie at the intersection of data science, IT, business, and medicine. His PhD and postdoc were in computational systems biology, focused on studying cardiovascular disease mechanisms and drug discovery. That's quite a mouthful. He has published in high-impact publications, including 8 peer-reviewed journal articles, 3 book chapters, 4 conference proceedings, and vocational articles and columns in magazines and social media to increase societal awareness about critical issues. In addition to this, Pradeep also participates in social volunteering events related to enhancing education in healthcare in the economically disadvantaged groups. So that's quite a lot of things you've done, Pradeep. So I have known Pradeep for 20 years now. We did our postgraduate program in bioinformatics from the Institute of Bioinformatics and Applied Biotechnology, or IBAB, in Bangalore. He is someone I remember to be the best programmer in our group. This was a group of 30 people who were computer engineers, electronics engineers, doctors, dentists, pharmacists, and scientists. And Pradeep was always studying. He was doing his master's in IT in parallel to a full-time strenuous course that we went through. And his LinkedIn profile shows a lot of Coursera courses that he's gone through. And he's probably one of the only people I know who's taken up so many courses and completed them with certificates, from machine learning to artificial intelligence and all sorts of things. And he also went to IIM Bangalore to do a program in business analytics. And after all of this, I still believe he's just getting started. So welcome, Pradeep. Thank you for taking the time out to attend our webinar.
Definitely, Ankit. Thank you for having me here. And also, I would take the opportunity to thank all the registered people here for taking out their time to attend this event.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Pradeep, you had this long unconventional journey, and I think a lot of people who registered for this webinar and are taking time out at 8 o'clock tonight, are very interested in learning, understanding your journey from dentistry to becoming a data scientist at Google, and it's been a 20-year long journey, I think. You should tell us more about this journey. It was a bold move 20 years ago, and even today, I think not a lot of dentists would try to make that kind of move, right? How did your family and peers react to it? And we want to hear that story that you went through. I think everyone's here for that, and there's lots of inspiration to be gained from everything that we'll be asking you this evening.
True. Okay. First of all, Ankit, like you call it as unconventional path. Definitely, for others, it appears like my career is very unusual and chaotic. But for me, I call it as a personal disruption. When I call it as a personal disruption, basically, you are going after something which is not met, right? And going after in a way that you do things in a way that other people or not many could do it in a way you do it, right? And also you try to start from the beginning and try to excel and kind to master it, right? So there's a lot of though although it appears like there's a lot of zigzag, but definitely it's not a random. Underlying there's a pattern which kind of holds everything what you do together to achieve something great. That's the core values. We do have like I know like you are also with a similar kind of background and a similar kind of journey you had. I am sure you agree that these are the core set of values which kind of holds everything we do together, right? Today probably when I
Absolutely.
take the audience through the journey, I would like to kind of paint uh, in their minds that what I have done till now, everything comes together for what I'm doing now, right? Another thing I would like to also say here is basically, although we have kind of gone through a certain path which appears unusual, right? Till now, I think going further, this is going to be something of a new norm. What I mean by this is, be it you start with any domain, right? You would probably have to do a similar kind of journey that we did in a much harder way. It would be more streamlined because of the technology and because of the awareness and because of the facilities available. And I think people have to end up if they have to end up in a data science, they have to go through this new norm, right? And kind of do awesome job using data science in their own domains or using their domain knowledge in the data science field, right?
Yeah, I
With
think
that,
the boundaries are breaking. The boundaries are breaking because of the availability
definitely,
of knowledge, and people, it's a three idiots kind of story where people now can follow their dream, whether it's data science or want to do music or whatever. Yeah.
definitely. To come back to my career path. So as a child, I've always been like my hobby has been in kind of like doing electronics, being very good at mechanical things, right? At the same time, I had immense knowledge, immense interest on the biology, right? At the junction when I had to decide, unfortunately, the Indian education is like that. At the +2, you need to decide whether you have to go to a medical stream or you have to be in an engineering stream. With whatever understanding I had at that time, I saw that if you're not taking up a medical career at that +2 junction, you would never be a doctor. You'll never have a certificate to practice, right? But alternatively, you can still have multiple opportunities to go after getting engineering thing. This is unlike if you are in the US or some other developed countries where you have opportunity to do both, right? They can be a doctor, but also a computer programmer or a computational scientist. So you can kind of mix and match, and you can still practice, but also do these things in tandem. But in India, it's unfortunately that was not the situation then, and I think to the large extent it's still the same. But things have changed from there. So that's where I decided like I need to be in the medical field rather and pick up the engineering thing. Uh, And even in dentistry, I never used to conform. I never used to kind of be conformed to the things have that was asked to do it in a particular way. Having said, like dentistry is very practical, hand orient, lots of hands-on, right? So in the second year, I still remember in the pre-clinicals. In the third year, you get into the pre-clinicals. In the second year, you need to work on the models, right? Where you have a plaster of Paris model and you're asked to prepare cavities, right? That is basically you use a chisel and kind of drill the cavities, class 1, class 2, class 3, whatever be it, in the cavity using a chisel, and it's basically to give you expertise or experience or hand control on digging the cavities inside. I still remember I never used to kind of do it the way it was asked to. Like I used to invent my own tools, doing those things. Why not? Like if you can do something much better than what can be achieved. Ultimately, the output matters here because you need to deliver something very good to the patient. So if the tool can do, why should we kind of even work? So that's the attitude I had. That basically the same attitude led me to kind of see that by practicing, right, you are able to cover a very fragment of very small fragment of people. That is your patient, or within your society, you are able to cater your service to kind of some amount of people. But at that juncture, idea stuck to me that okay, if you get into some research, or if you are able to kind of come up with a drug, or if you are able to come up with some diagnostic that can kind of reach a large fragment of people, right? You can kind of impact the society in billions, right?
So
So that was
Pradeep,
the basic.
while you were doing all this, where did computers come in? I know this fact that you did serious dentistry where you actually were drilling holes in people's teeth and filling them up and things like that, right? From there to while you were studying dental, you were teaching people object-oriented programming. You were going to large IT companies as a consultant. So you're doing all of this. You're trying to innovate with dentistry. You're trying to innovate with why can this be done and this not be done? How
Definitely.
did you find the time, and what motivated you to study, change something, change your field so drastically, and then move on in that? I would love to hear where you pivoted in life. Take us forward in that journey.
Right. Definitely. While doing my final year, right, this was the thing I wanted to kind of do things and kind of deliver impact to much at scale to the community, right? So during dentistry, I kind of had few ideas. Back then, it was .com. It was not called startup, right? So there was one engineer who came back and he had started a proprietary company, and I kind of got hold of him and said, like, I'm interested. These are my ideas, and we need to kind of. So he got interested, and kind of we made a business proposal, right? And we went into a venture capitalist, and we presented. And unfortunately, that was
While you were
when
doing dental, all this while you were doing dental. So you go to a
right in
venture
the final
capital, you have a .com idea. Okay, nice.
Right, right. So basically, he had a heavy network of engineers, and he had contacts in US. But I had also contacts from the medical point of view, like medical faculties, and there were a couple of very the faculties which kind of they supported me in my ideas. So I brought them together, and we put a proposal, and we went for funding. But the funding was pretty large at that, even at that point of time. And unfortunately, the
Which
.com
year
bubble
was
burst.
this? Which year was this?
Somewhere around 2000. No,
Okay. Wasn't that
yeah,
when the .com bubble burst? That was perfect
exactly,
timing, Pradeep.
exactly. So we couldn't go further on those aspects, but that gave me the opportunity to kind of work with the engineer, the person, the CEO of the company, and he kind of involved me into the consultancy work and also the corporate training. So I never had at that junction. I never had a degree in computer science, but I used to go to companies and do consultancy in object-oriented analysis and design. And my expertise was in UML tool and rational rows at that time, right? We used to pick up the requirements and we used to convert that into systems, like systems design or software engineering design. And we used to teach the engineers how to do it very efficiently, right? Using process, rational unified process. I have been in multiple trainings, training people from somewhere between a fresher to someone who is experienced, 8 to 10 years experience, like continuously conducting training and consultancy for like 4 to 8 days continuously, just me alone, and having no computer science degree and talking to such experienced people. That used to be very exciting time, right? So that's how I started up. And then what happened was, basically I did realize that in order to achieve my dreams, I need to also be in research. That's when the I think government of Karnataka kind of deputed few industrialists as well as academics, including IIST, people from NCBS, National Center for Biological Sciences, ISI, that is a statistical institute from Calcutta, and that's where we met, like we were classmates there, right? So that gave us a lot of opportunity to learn about how to use the technology in tandem with the biological sciences. And like we were discussing the other day, like we can still call we will still justify calling like bioinformatics as data science of biology, uh, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that was a pivotal moment. I think when you talk about systems in India, India is not very. The opportunity we got in that, me coming from pharma, you coming from dentistry, is that, and our classmates being from computer science, engineering, medicine, this whole cross industry, cross disciplinary background that an institute like IBAB created. I think there's more of that needed, because that's what pivoted us in our lives. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Right. True. Very true. And that's when, like, that led me to when I do you remember, like, when we completed the course in IBAB, we were up, like we had an opportunity to either go into the industry or go into the academic, and I chose academic. And I chose to work as an intern, as internship for in National Center for Biological Sciences, in one of the best laboratory under Upinder Singh Balla, who is a very eminent neuro scientist.
Computational
Computer,
neurologist, computational
yeah,
neuroscientist.
computational.
Yes. Yes.
That's where I learned very serious modeling. Basically, we used to do the network modeling using differential equation to understand the processes in the neuronal network. His lab work on how to decipher the olfaction, like how does the rat or human being can smell and differentiate between the smells, and also what are the neuronal networks behind this. So this was the kind of research. So in his lab, basically, I learned about modeling. Then we did a lot of database, basically data crunching, the model curation, and putting those signals into a database. So all this were initial trainings, and though we didn't call it as a data science back then, so these were all data intensive, and we used a very sophisticated model to understand the biological processes, right? And that also spawned me, gave me opportunity to, with full scholarship, to go to Korea for a PhD, right? So in the lab I went to in Korea, basically my professor there was head of consortium of labs, and I kind of identified an opportunity there, basically to use my skills, that is skills in IT as well as medical skills, right, to work in a field which is cardiovascular disease, where we saw how a normal heart would progress from a normal state to a disease state, and heart failure would occur. And we did this using network biology. So using, and also there was an opportunity. So to say that my PhD was very atypical again. So I was doing two things. One is the research, which is required to get my thesis, and the second thing is I was running a team of IT and kind of like uh, building systems. So which would do like for putting the data together, which we call it data integration, data mining, and also building visual analytical systems, like statistical systems, to take the data and help biologists or physicians to do visualization, something like a Google Maps. But in Google Maps, you have building structures and roads, but in biological system, you have nodes which are protein or genes, and some link between the edges, which kind of have some relationship between this two, and where you can do A/B comparison, and all sorts of visualization with statistical thing. So that was one of the.
So, do you believe the field of biology actually was way ahead in data science uh, than any other field? Because the stuff we did back then was really, really complicated, even by today's standards. So,
Definitely,
what's your view there? This is
it's
my
not just.
question.
No, no, you are right in a way. Is still the biology is very challenging. Even for the physicists, the hardcore physicists, the biology is still a challenging place because when you are dealing with the engineering system, right, you're dealing with n variables where you can predict what are these variables. But in biological system, it's a very random thing, and this variabilities you don't even know what you're dealing with, right? So it's definitely and something very close to this is also like. Physics, astronomical physics, where you're dealing with like black holes and billions of stars and estimations, and so it's
Yes.
not, yeah, it's a similar complexity you're dealing with. So my PhD also dealt with basically we had this on one hand I was creating this data engineering, the data pipelines, data mining tools, and also visualization tools. On the other end, we were trying to use we were creating ontologies, right? And also the methodologies, basically using machine learning or statistical methods to process this data, right? And come up with novel diagnostic ways, methods, as well as identifying drugs which can cure the cardiovascular diseases. So this was basically about my PhD, and the tools which I had built, kind of I could publish in very good journals like NAR. Basically, this particular journal takes something biological tools once in a year, and there's a very high bar for getting these tools into those publications, right? And this was pivotal. Like Johnson and Johnson back then, they liked my tool and they wanted to procure that, but somehow uh, this
Wow.
deal didn't go through. The deal didn't go through, but that gave me an idea that okay, there's a potential for this to be commercial. Then probably how about creating my own startup? So back then, I Korea was also kind of incubating a lot of startups that with some kind of funding, but you had to go through some competition. Like hundreds of people had applied. I did apply and I did win the competition. I got some initial seed funding along with the university. I started the startup, and this was when I had also finished my PhD. So had my postdoc and startup running in parallel, and
Wow. That's a lot of work. Yeah.
so yeah,
I think that's an
yeah,
important lesson. That's an important lesson people need to take away from this. That the amount of hard work that went in this journey is unbelievable. I mean, I have built two startups, and the amount of work that goes in is huge, and it may or may not succeed. That's the worst part.
true. Like you said, it's not for multiple reasons the startup may fail, right? Sometimes one thing you need to learn in startup is like you have to keep going, right? Sometimes because of multiple factors, though you're very advanced on the technological front, uh, the technology or the domain aspects are not at all a problem for you, but there would be a stage in your personal life where you have to kind of way of like whether you have to focus on the personal, because my wife was also doing a PhD. We had a 2.5-year-old son, and it's a foreign country where language, culture, everything is different. So I was looking for opportunity to come back and get
And
a
you're
social support.
vegetarian, right? In Korea.
Yeah.
Yes. To add to
So
that, absolutely.
so I was looking for opportunity to come back and get some kind of social support while my wife completes her PhD. So that's when I took I this opportunity from Google came across, right? So I wanted to come
How
back
did
to
that
India.
come? How did Google happen?
Basically, a recruiter from Google approached me and said, like, we have multiple positions, and we would like, are you willing to consider? And that's when I looked at multiple some of these positions, a couple of things like which are related to data science, right? Made sense. But right now, I'll pause here and say, like, okay, then why not medical field, right? Why not something in a medical field? But by
This will
then,
be
like
my
when
next question. Why didn't you continue with your research? Why didn't you further that and head a lab and become a professor or whatever? Why did you actually opt to get out and join industry?
That's a good question, actually. When you disrupt yourself, right, you would also identify what are the things you don't know. That when I did my startup, I know what like how bad I was at business, right? And the Google position I chose was basically in a team which is hops heavy, and you will be working with some of the best minds having MBA, right? That was a very kind of calculated decision I took, right? And also it was in a search, Google search. So by then I had also by building the systems like search engine for my own tool, had identified that these complex systems, be it a search or a Google Maps, right, or a biological network, which is in biological network, you have proteins, genes interacting. In the Google search, it's web pages interacting. In Google Maps, it's nodes and roads. So all these are a complex biological system, right? What you call disease in human body, right, is something called spam or abuse on a Google search,
Yeah.
right? So what you call as a drug discovery, I mean, a particular chemical going in a particular biological network and kind of inhibiting or activating some protein in order to give you a therapeutic effect. That's exactly you do here in this system. So what analytics or a data science or a statistical approaches you take in a biological system, when you abstract it out, it's the same thing in each of these systems. But in your own startup, right? The access to the data, access to technology, access to the computation, access to the best minds may not happen because of various reasons, economic and financial, various reasons. But Google has
Yeah.
all of this, which gives you readily, and you can go there and experiment on many of this, and there is immense learning. That's where I landed up in Google.
Infra is really expensive. Infra is really expensive for a startup.
Infra
In
and
fact, one of the
data.
reasons why we as a company exist, Blob City, is to give you that infra at really, really low costs. I don't mean to be salesy, but I just thought it made sense coming from a startup yourself.
No problem. Yeah, true. And that's where I worked in Google Search for 4 years, and now what I am doing is very interesting. I'm shifted into GDO, which is Geo Data Operations. I work as a TPGM, machine intelligence, basically for day-to-day. We are solving very interesting problem. Basically, these problems can be categorized into something called ML ops, right? You may have a model productionalized, but there are multiple other things which the model which you need to look for. For example, like the trends in the data keeps changing. How do you maintain the model so that it still performs at an optimal level after the data changes, right? So all these are very large scale problems which be it monitoring it or be it, like there are certain aspects of automations which are involved to make this end-to-end process of ML very efficient, right? So those are the very complex problems we are trying to solve in this particular team, and it's definitely worth investing time. And at the end, basically, going back to my values, like of kind of uh, uh, contributing to the community at scale. I think Google is a company which does allow. So there was one case in Nigeria. I mean, there are multiple things, but one thing which recently which struck me very thing is in Nigeria, some NGO is using Google Maps, right, where they used to take 1.5 hours to take the blood from point A to point B. Google Map is helping them to do it in less than 15 to 20 minutes, right? That means saving so many lives. So at the end of the day, knowing what you're doing can kind of impact people and save life is awesome. And I think in Google recently also in the Google has been showing what are the places where food is available, where they can halt, and also Google and Apple has kind of come together and kind of helping to contact tracing. So all these are like real life
Who knew?
situations, real life problems.
That's an interesting combination. Google and Apple coming together. Lovely
Right,
to do good.
right,
Yeah.
right. So
So,
it's also helping in a COVID situation. So all these individual things, things what you do, kind of helping billions of people. Ultimately, this is what you keeps you motivated. So yeah, uh,
fantastic. What I really liked is the way you, abstracted out your learnings from network biology and then put it up, put it to use in Google, which is brilliant. I think it's fantastic. While we are at this, we've been getting a whole bunch of questions coming from the audience. So this comes from Dr. Kushal Bhattarai. I am a trained dentist as well. I went into basic science and did MD biochemistry. I have developed an interest in genomic data science. Can you please give me an orientation on what could be the opportunities I can have in this field, and also what I need to do to get into that profession? I think this kind of there might be a lot of folks here who are interested in genomic data science or data science as such. I think you can probably cover about genomic data science and data science. Yeah.
so Vinich, he is willing to get into the genomic data science, or
Yeah,
basically
he's a
looking for
dentist who wants to get
any
into
opportunity.
genomic data science. He's been studying biochemistry. He's interested in getting into genomic data science.
Right. One thing, there are two aspects to it here, right? Or multiple aspects, but I would like to categorize into two aspects. One is the domain. I think being a dentist and having done your MD in the biomedical related field, right? You are quite sufficient and well versed with your domain aspect. Now, coming to the other part, the technological bit, which also includes uh, the programming, and the other bit is basically statistics and data science related, data related. How do you handle the data? These are the places. These are the things which you need to kind of handle. And there are multiple courses which you could take. Basically, that's exactly what I did while doing my PhD. In order to, there were not all the courses were offered, even in the engineering departments related to data science. Like Ankit pointed, I took a lot of Coursera courses and kind of filled those gaps, what is required to kind of attain those skills, and then started seeing for an opportunity how to use those skills what I've attained in the projects, right? Just doing one thing I need to very clearly say, uh, doing courses on, especially the MOOC courses online, will take you to certain extent, but it would not be enough for you to attain the experience you need to handle the real life situation. So
That's right.
it is highly recommended that you find projects, right? So and start working. It could be an open source project, or for example, like you are interested in genomic, right? This is a very like the COVID situation is a great opportunity. The multiple viral labs, they have tremendous amount of data, right? But they don't have data science skills. The people with the data science skills to process the data and come up with insights, which either could be used for the discovery of drugs, or it could be used for discovery of vaccines, or even understand what is the nature of the COVID, right? Nothing much is known about this particular uh, virus and the disease, right? This is the,
I
I
agree.
think you have a lot of opportunities, right? To
Yeah,
contact this
there's lots of data sources that have been the Cord9 and all these are out there. You can write programs to look at a lot of data on publications. There's probably solutions in there which no one knows about. There's tons of data,
exactly.
so that's fantastic.
ICMR has 38 labs. I'm sure like they
Yeah,
have kind of recently sequenced about 70 plus different strains of COVID, right? Or different strains of COVID from multiple states, right? They have this immense database, right? What is required now is to take this data, which is freely available, right? Use your data science skills, right? What you learned either through Coursera or so. Start working on them. You may not, as you work step by step, definitely you will identify opportunities to go further, right? And also you would be able to like understand that what is that you're stuck with, and reach out to the right professionals. And I'm sure like there are multiple professionals who are willing to help you in different forums, right? So that's the best, that's exactly the way I learned. And I think that's the most if you ask any seasoned data scientist, right? This is exactly they would also tell you. Ankit, you have been through multiple interviews with data scientists, right? Is this
Yeah.
the common opinion they too have?
Absolutely. I think learning by doing is the best way to do it. You can learn only this much from a course, a master's program, or a MOOC or whatever. But unless you get your hands dirty, 80% of data science is data cleaning, and no one would know that until you actually jump into it and realize it isn't as glamorous as it looks. But it is satisfying at the end of it. So I absolutely agree with what you're saying. Pradeep, you've done so much, okay? And I think one of the things I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone here. What keeps you motivated? Because the people would give up after dental, or maybe you did one thing and then you gave up, and you did this internship at NCBS, and then you went to Korea and did this under all sorts of personal and professional hindrances, and you've actually gone and accomplished what you've accomplished. What do you do to keep yourself motivated? What's your routine like? How does what makes Pradeep tick, and what can we learn from Pradeep?
Sure, Ankit. One thing is probably is basically having passion, right? So I have a passion for problem solving, and then I have values in terms of like I want to contribute as much at scale to the community, right? Spending more time with you, being kind of plugged into your value system always helps, right? How and also helps you to be very result oriented, meaning like I this helps you to kind of learn new things. As you learn new things, you have a lot of storage. Now you go ahead, like I explained to the person who had asked, go ahead and kind of find new opportunities to use those skills, those knowledge, right? While you do that, probably you would kind of fulfill certain goals or certain challenges. In the process, you will learn like what else you don't know, right? That kind of helps you to go back where you started, that is learning new things. And also having achieved something which you had not done earlier, that itself keeps you motivated, like you achieved it, and then it motivates you to take up new challenges, right? And basically, yeah. So basically, you this goes on in iteration, and you keep yourself motivated with the new challenges.
So
But
stay at it.
one thing,
Don't give up. Stay at it. Don't give up. Just
right?
just
But
just
one
keep
thing,
doing it. You fail a little, you're still learning.
right? So what I mean, like to use the same the first the one of the words which kind of I used was basically you're disrupting personally, right? This is called a personal disruption. Uh, uh, so there's other part to it, like how do you stay motivated? Just doing this would not keep you motivated, but you should also be very positive about what you're doing. That comes by spending more time with your values, right? Because when you're disrupting yourself, right, there's a toll on your career, there's a toll on your family and social, and also your financial problems. So the only way you can kind of handle this is staying positive, and also kind of surrounding yourself with people who are positive, or things which would help you in stay positive, like be it meditation, or listening to being very spiritual, or listening to spiritual leaders, or having great minded people are surrounding you, right? So that definitely helps. And also, like, one thing you should also remember, okay, you achieved certain complex goals, and that's the point where you should also reward yourself, right? The reward could be as simple as like binge watching something, or another best reward is like spending time with your family. One thing you have to remember, though you are disrupting yourself, it also takes a lot of toll on your family, right? So yeah, having a great vacation plan, extended vacation plan with your family, and rewarding the entire family would also keep you motivated. And I think and spending more values with your time with your focused on your values, it definitely keeps you motivated and keeps you going on.
No, note to self: take your family on vacation. Yeah, I'll remember that one. I'm sure a lot of people would. We have a question from Bharat S, who says, "Were you working full time and learning data science? If someone wants to reskill to data science while working, I'm assuming, how much time will it take to claim yourself to be a data scientist or a machine learning engineer?"
Yeah, that's a
There's
good
a lot of
question to
such
ask.
questions. Yes.
That's a good, very good question to ask. But because these days there are multiple advertisements saying, okay, do crash course in data science. In 3 months, you can become a data scientist. I think that is very unrealistic. In 3 months or be it even a year, what you would get is very overview of what data science is, right? And also, data science is again, it's a very loaded word, right? Data science is not one particular role, right? So depending upon your background, your interest, you should identify whether what you call as a data scientist is whether you want to be, you have say you have a MBA degree or you're more business oriented. So part of data science, which deals with taking the analytical insights and applying it to the business, what we call as business intelligence or business insights role, would suit you. So then you have to kind of go after those skill sets in order to be that. Or you are very statistically oriented and you're research oriented, then being a research data scientist where you would develop a new algorithms, right? Or go after doing experiments, setting up experiments, and this is the kind of work you like, then you have to go after those things. And this is the especially I would like to call when you call a research data scientist, this is one of the role which you would have to spend maximum. So this is the role where PhDs are most welcoming rather than any other paper. And there are other roles as well. Basically, data engineering, where if you're from engineering background, you already have a extensive software engineering, like you can handle your code, right? But with a different mindset, right? You can get into data engineering or cloud engineering, where you enable the data which gets into the model or data, help you in the building the pipelines or processing pipeline to get data in a tangible way where it could be consumed by a model or analysis. That's what you need to get into, right? And yeah, similarly, like if you want to invest your more time in like taking something what data scientists built on a playbook or on a Colab or Jupyter notebook, right? And you want to implement that in a production system, right? That's where you need to target for as a machine learning engineer or reliability engineer. So first, know what is your strength, right? So that's the first thing. Second, invest in the skills to go to the target or what the role you're targeting for, right? And uh, and learn basic things, but also find opportunity to work on real-time projects. Nothing beats the real-time projects, right? So yeah, and having said this, basically, I wouldn't want to give any timeline because the timeline is very tricky. It depends upon how much of time you're investing, what level you are starting, what is your background. A lot of factors are, so it's very individual thing. So giving timeline makes not much sense.
Yeah, perfect. In fact, to Bharat, who asked this question, and to others over here, the Blob City AI Cloud is one such platform. It is a Jupyter notebook on the cloud. It helps, you become a better data scientist along with the learning resources. After this webinar, we will send out a link before, after you log off. We will be sending out a link with a promo code to help you try out the cloud and the learning resources. All right, moving on. There's a bunch of questions we have. Uh, so, what is the achievement that you've had that you are most proud of? What is the most interesting work you've done in data science? And this is more like a rapid fire. So, if you can just the most interesting work and most, so we can cover more questions, right?
Right. Uh, So for me, a interesting work would be where I can show the impact, right? So a couple of projects. Of course, there are a lot of things we are doing in Google, but apart from Google, I'll want to take example apart from the Google. Though my startup was a failure, I, right? That was the most interesting because I could kind of work in academic in tandem with my research, right? Create products, and that products were valued by the industry back then, right? And I could take that academic product into a startup environment, get some initial funding, and then kind of understand like what goes into uh, getting a product from academia to industry, right? What goes into the scaling, right? How things work differently in business world than in academic world, right? There's a lot of learning which I obtained in the process, although it was a failure, but the learning from there kind of created that maturity and also laid a path to what I'm doing right now. Yeah, so that's one of the most interesting. To be a little bit more tangible on this question, like when I was in again when I was in IMB, right? We worked on a live project for FAB, that is the uh, Abu Dhabi Bank, first Abu Dhabi Bank, which is the largest bank in Abu Dhabi. There we kind of took it's a banking problem, so they didn't have a customer lifetime value model for their bank, so the interaction with their SMEs were not very efficient. So we took the problem and using some kind of decision trees as well as using HML, second order HML, we could create a model which helped the bank to kind of profile their SMEs and also kind of interact with its customers much efficiently, right? So that was something which was very mathematical, and HMM was one thing which I had never kind of applied in my entire, even during my PhD. So and also having that support from the IIMB, right? And also the team which I had was very was a different world altogether, like doing that project.
Fantastic. We have a very interesting question from Sangeeta Manoj. It says, would you consider going back to being a full-time dentist later in the future?
Probably
You have to think
not,
for this one.
but no. Actually, the reason I paused is this, when I was doing my PhD and other things, I had this as a retirement plan. So after retiring, probably I want to go, but not take it as a profession, but I wanted to do it altogether as a social service. So
You
yeah,
can
I would
probably
have kind of
create an
some investment.
AI-driven dentist bot who does everything, and dental expenses are really high. So I guess just
No, no,
gathering
that could be a reality.
dentists
No,
are
Ankit, that's not a fab actually. That could be a reality because having seen the ML and AI in robotics, and you
yeah.
have seen recently the robotics being such capable is becoming very capable, right? There'll be soon a day where dental kind of some of the procedures could be done by robotic thing. Already there are robots which can do certain operations, certain procedures, like the dental a kind of a surgeon will sit in front of a computer in a virtual environment. He kind of operates on a virtual human being, which is representative of the patient there, right? And then he says he kind of replays it. He checks everything is fine, and then he plays. That's called robotic surgery. And then the robot executes that particular thing in a very minimal invasive way with minimal damage to the person, right? That's already a reality. But as for the dentistry, it's not. But I think it's in a very already they're using 3D printers to print dental, basically dental crowns and other things. So this will be very soon a reality.
Nice. So we have a question from Hamza Yassad from Algeria. He says, hello, I'm a dental student from Algeria. I'm actually working on a project. I'm trying to develop a diagnostic device working with AI, DL, TensorFlow to enhance TMJD diagnosis. I don't know. I'm hoping you know the meaning of TMJD.
Retromandibular joint. Yeah.
Nice. how can you help me in this in the matter of motion capture? I try to work with Arduino and sensors. I mean, this is exactly what I mean. It's pretty much related to what you're talking about, and there's someone who actually asked this question. Any answers to
Right.
that, Pradeep?
So basically, as I didn't get the entire question because it's very complex, so I need to little bit. So basically, what he is asking to make sense is basically he has a TMJ, that is temporomandibular joint disorder, right? Basically, where the mandible joins your temporal. So sometimes some people yawn and the mandible gets stuck. That could happen because of multiple problems. The bone, there could be a deformity in the bone, or there's some sort of infection or some muscle or a ligament problem, right? So I think he has, what I understand from his is he has some kind of uh, images or some kind of way of capturing this data, and he wants to build a model, right? So having said this, like, I think it depends on like whether if you have image, it's a different approach you're taking, right? If you are a different, if it's a different kind of signal data, you will basically get into a different approach. If it's an image, basically you get into image processing, right? A deep learning approach would be a very good approach. But if you want in the process some kind of model explainability, right? You want to explain what are the causes, what are the things which are making this thing. Then going after deep learning would not give you that. That's one of the disadvantage, right? Then you have to get into much simpler models where you can have you can see the causality between what is output and what is the input, right? That is one thing. But if you have a different data, again, you have to decide whether explainability is important, or is just that the diagnostic, the output is important. Based on that, you choose your model, right? But within this short span, with whatever the description you've given, it's difficult to kind of make a judgment. I just guessed what you're asking, and I've given you the thing. But feel free to contact Velocity and get my email ID. I would be definitely happy to kind of interact with you and help you out on this. And it's an interesting problem, by the way.
Yeah, it is. It is. It goes in line with what you were talking about. Who knows, something interesting could come out of it. Pradeep, where do you see the future of the field of data science going now that you have this massive exposure? Is it auto ML with lesser human intervention, or just newer technologies or paradigms in programming with newer and more effective languages where people can create more and more effective AI? Is it, So I hope you got the question.
Right. I
This is
think,
a question, by the way.
pardon?
This question is from Love City, not from the audience.
Okay, okay. So I would like to kind of break this into three components, right? One is when you're talking about this data science or ML or AI problem, you have a data, then there's a model, and there's something, a problem which you're solving. That's a business problem you're solving for, right? So the improvements would happen in all of this, right? For example, let's take data, right? Currently, data is available. The kind of challenges we are seeing is data processing. Though the data is a lot of data is available, we don't have a very good data, right? So there'll be a lot of innovation in tools which can automatically process this data, right? But at the same time, there are multiple governance issues, and people are also becoming aware that they don't want to expose because of privacy and security concerns their data easily, right? So although there'll be a lot of sensors through IoTs and other things, the availability of data for a particular company will reduce, right? So the way the company have to efficiently manage this data in order to get the insights should also increase. So there'll be a lot of innovation in that area, right? So be it because of the GDPR or anything, right? And also, like, for example, there's a search engine. Right now, the search engine crawlers go everywhere and get the data. In future, because of the GDPR or some other compliance, the availability of data is not so easy, right? So you need to kind of be innovative in that way to get whatever data is possible, right? And make sense of it, right? And also there are challenges, right? Especially in the COVID season or in the election season, for example, US. right? There's a lot of fake news, misinformation, right? So it's the data. Definitely the data could also be available in a good quality, but the information, the underlying information could be itself be a very wrong, and that itself can expose. So basically what you feed into the model is what you get, right? What you get basically. If you have a bias in the model, say for example you have a model which predicts the given set of people who is likely to commit a crime. Say you have bias in the model where you have fed a lot of black people, the data of lot of black, because that's the data available for you, and a very few white people, right? And when you feed that into the model, so there's definitely a bias in the model, right? So ultimately, when two people are input and as predict who is going to lie, who's likely to be a defaulter, it obviously, even though the black person who you're inputting might have a very trivial crimes, he would the model would say he's likely to commit serious crime in future. Though the white person
Yeah,
had a very
it's ego. Garbage in, garbage out. So you will. I
so
mean,
there's
it's
a
a
bias.
classic problem. Yeah,
So
there
there's
is a
a lot of
bias.
innovation has to happen here in terms of like how we process data and by identifying the fake news and misinformation. So that's the data processing bit, and also there a lot of graphical user interface, basically to give domain experts to manage this data easily. So that's one bit. The second, coming to the model aspect, definitely going further, a lot of things will be automated. That's where the auto ML would come into picture, right? So what a senior data scientist would be able to do should be able the model auto ML should be able to do. Only difference is auto ML, the model generated by auto ML could be say of X percentage, and the model generated by a senior data scientist maybe X plus 2 to 5% accurate. But when you take when you consider solving the problem in an industrial scale, right? That 2 to 5% may not mean much, right? So
Yeah.
having this auto ML basically would also enable human feedback into the loop. Means instead of having one model generated by a specialist data scientist, there'll be n number of models now, right? So the domain expert is fed back into the loop, right? Now instead of like getting into the mechanics, you give more opportunity for a domain expert to play with his creativity, right? So these models, which are kind of pre-structured, pre-tuned, right, pre-trained, are available readily, right, and it has a specification, right, and the domain experts or the end user is able to choose it, or it could also go to a certain extent that there could be a kind of semantic discoverability. Means he's just exposed to say Excel kind of environment. The program itself is able to look at the data and choose a model and recommend to the domain expert. This is the most likely model, right? So basically, the semantic discoverability happens within the tool, and the tool can suggest, and you can just using mere creativity and some kind of domain knowledge, you should be able to solve the problems, right? So this is where the entire ML field is going towards, right? On the other, on the application side, the business side, right? There's a tremendous opportunities. Be it the opportunities exist in every field. It could be on the finance, it could be on medical, it could be on e-commerce, right? It could be even in the fuel side. Every name a field, there'll be a lot of application oriented. So
Understood.
one of the major
Pradeep,
right.
actually, we are almost out of time. I'm sorry. I think what we'll do is for the audience, we will get these questions. There are a whole bunch of questions here, and 1 hour doesn't do them justice. We'll send them out to you, and then for the audience, we will create a blog and send it out to them after this webinar is
Sure,
done.
no problem.
Thanks a lot, Pradeep, for this. Just a quick, the goodie bag is our $25 plan. We will be sending out a 14-day trial to everyone who's attended this webinar. Please use the promo code that will be sent to you and it will be active only for the next 24 hours. So please log in and see the learning resources, see how you can become a data scientist. Lots and lots of learnings and lots of things to play with, which would cost you a lot of money otherwise. And thank you very much. Stay safe. Have a superb evening. Until we meet again next Tuesday. And thank you very much, Pradeep, for taking the time out. And
No problem.
everyone who signed on for this webinar, thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Pradeep.
Yep.
Thank
Happy
you.
learning and stay safe. Bye.
Stay safe. Bye.